The Sterling Mansion dining room was exactly what I had expected. Aggressively opulent, demonstrably wasteful, and filled with the kind of people who measured worth by the conspicuousness of consumption. I sat at the massive mahogany table in my worn corduroy jacket, the same jacket I had worn because I had just finished a 16-hour security audit, not because I couldn't afford anything better. Next to me, my fiancé, Lucas, adjusted his silk tie with the practiced ease of someone born into wealth and completely unconscious of how much that tie cost. Across from us sat Lucas's parents. His father, Mr. Sterling, a man whose face suggested perpetual entitlement, and his mother, Mrs. Sterling, whose jewelry alone probably cost more than most people's homes. The waiter poured water. The appetizer was cleared. And then Mrs. Sterling turned to me with the kind of smile that wasn't actually a smile, the kind that appeared before an execution. "Lucas, darling," she began, her voice carefully pitched to carry to the entire room, "we simply cannot have you marry someone who clearly relies on your salary for basic necessities. It's not appropriate. It's not secure." Lucas's jaw tightened. He didn't defend me. He simply looked at his food and said nothing. "A security analyst," Mrs. Sterling continued, and I could hear the mockery dripping from her words like poison, "who works from home, in a corduroy jacket. Lucas, sweetheart, she needs money. She probably needs a loan just to afford interview clothes, doesn't she?" The silence at the table was deafening. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally understand that the people you love don't actually see you at all. "Actually," I said quietly, setting down my fork, "I should clarify something about my financial situation." Lucas put his hand on my arm, a warning. He didn't want me to correct them. That's when I understood. He didn't want them to know. He enjoyed the dynamic of being superior to his poor fiancée. "I'm doing quite well, actually," I continued, my voice steady and cold. "But I appreciate your concern." Mrs. Sterling laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that cut through the dining room like broken glass. "Of course you are, dear. And I'm a rocket scientist." I excused myself from the table that night and never returned. I am Lydia Hayes, 32 years old, the invisible architect of Sterling Global Investments' entire digital security infrastructure. For the past 5 years, I had lived in complete anonymity by choice, a choice that was part of my contract with Sterling Global. The company paid me a 6-figure monthly retainer to design, build, and maintain their proprietary security system, the Titan Shield. The system was so sophisticated, so elegant, so uncompromisable, that it had become the foundation of their entire multi-billion-dollar operation. Nobody at Sterling Global knew my name. Not officially. I was simply the architect, a ghost in their system, visible only through the perfection of my work. I had lived deliberately simply because I could. I didn't need to impress anyone. I donated most of my money to education initiatives for young women in technology. I wore comfortable, worn clothes because expensive clothes felt like performance. I lived in a secluded log cabin, not out of poverty, but out of preference, a property I had purchased with my own earnings, equipped with a server room more advanced than most Fortune 500 companies' infrastructure. I had designed the Titan Shield specifically to be unbreakable, unhackable, and tamper-proof. It was my masterpiece. It was the reason Sterling Global could operate with the kind of financial security that made them one of the most trusted companies in the world. And the Sterling family had just confirmed that they saw me as a financial burden. What they didn't understand was that I could see everything they did on their systems, and what I saw in the days after that dinner was going to destroy them. I accessed my secure monitoring system from my cabin's server room, the one space in the world where I had complete authority and absolute privacy. My contract with Sterling Global gave me special access. Legitimate, documented, auditable access to the Titan Shield's core systems. I was supposed to use this access only for maintenance and security updates, but I also had the legal, contractual right to conduct security audits. That's what I told myself I was doing, a security audit. What I was actually doing was watching the Sterling family destroy themselves. 3 days after the dinner, I noticed something, a patch. Someone had attempted to modify the core auditing subsystem of the Titan Shield. The code was clumsy, amateurish, the work of someone who didn't understand the elegance of my original framework. The patch was designed to create a hidden entry point, a backdoor that would allow someone to access historical audit logs and potentially alter them. I traced the system profile that had initiated the patch. The profile belonged to Lucas Sterling. My fiancé, the man I had loved, the man who had sat silently while his mother mocked me, was trying to tamper with the most sophisticated security system in the world. He was trying to do it so clumsily that I would wonder if he was genuinely the stupid, or if he was counting on my love to blind me to what he was doing. I ran a deeper analysis. The tampering attempt correlated with dates and times when Lucas had been accessing the system from his office at Sterling Global. He had used his legitimate credentials to access areas he had no business accessing. He had tried to execute code he clearly didn't understand. Whatever he was trying to hide, whatever audit logs he was trying to alter, it was big enough that he was willing to risk his entire career and mine to cover it up. I should have felt heartbroken. Instead, I felt cold. I began monitoring his activity in real time, using my legitimate system administrator credentials to track his every keystroke. I documented everything: the dates, times, IP addresses, the content of the code he was attempting to execute. And I waited. 3 weeks later, I understood what he was trying to do. I had submitted a formal inquiry to Sterling Global's chief financial officer. I had the right to request financial data as part of my security certification process, asking for documentation of recent transactions related to an impending acquisition. The acquisition was massive. Sterling Global was purchasing a mid-sized oil trading company valued at $8 billion. The deal was supposed to close in 4 weeks, and according to the financial documents I reviewed, the entire deal depended on the historical accuracy of Sterling Global's audit logs. Those logs proved Sterling Global's financial integrity for the past 10 years. They proved, or were supposed to prove, that Sterling Global had operated within the law, within SEC guidelines, and within ethical business practices. If those logs were altered, if historical records were changed to hide something damaging, the entire acquisition would be fraudulent. The SEC would find out, and Sterling Global would face federal charges. Lucas was trying to hide something in those logs, but I needed to know what. I requested a meeting with Marcus Webb, a former SEC investigator who had become a private security consultant. I knew Marcus because I had met him years ago at a technology conference, before my consulting work demanded absolute anonymity. He was one of the few people in the world I trusted. We met at a coffee shop in a town 3 hours away from the city. I brought a secure, encrypted drive with documentation of Lucas's tampering attempts. "Marcus," I said, sliding the drive across the table, "I need to understand something. I have evidence that someone is attempting to alter historical financial records at a major corporation, but I don't know the scope of what they're trying to hide. How would I find out what fraud they're covering up without accessing systems I'm not authorized to use?" Marcus looked at the encrypted drive. He didn't touch it. "Lydia," he said carefully, "are you asking me how to break the law without getting caught?" "I'm asking you how to do the right thing," I replied. "There's a difference." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The right thing would be to go to the SEC, to report what you found, to let them investigate. You don't do this alone. You don't try to figure it out yourself. You report it and you let professionals handle it." I nodded slowly. He was right. The legal answer was clear, but I needed to know first. I needed to understand who I had been sleeping with. I needed to know if this was Lucas's scheme or if he was involved in something larger, something darker. I worked with Marcus to prepare a comprehensive report for the SEC. But before I filed it, I did one more thing. I reviewed the complete scope of Lucas's account activity. I looked at every file he had accessed, every system he had logged into, every communication he had sent through Sterling Global's secured email server. That's when I found it. An email chain between Lucas and his mother, Mrs. Sterling. The emails were dated 6 months ago, before my engagement, before I even knew Lucas. In the chain, Mrs. Sterling was directing a strategy, a calculated, intentional plan to manipulate Sterling Global's financial records. The goal wasn't to hide fraud by Lucas or Mr. Sterling. The goal was something far more calculated. Mrs. Sterling was orchestrating the entire acquisition to set Sterling Global up for failure. She was deliberately engineering circumstances that would tank the stock price after the acquisition closed. She was positioning herself to buy up Sterling Global's shares at a massive discount during the resulting crash. She was planning a hostile takeover of her husband's company. Lucas wasn't trying to cover up his own crimes. He was trying to cover up his mother's crimes. And he was doing it so incompetently that any forensic analysis would immediately catch him. The email chain also contained communications between Mrs. Sterling and a financial advisor discussing specific SEC statutes that might apply to their scheme. It was a confession, written in corporate email language, but a confession nonetheless. I had all the evidence I needed. I filed a comprehensive, anonymous report with the SEC using Marcus's secure communication channels. The report included detailed documentation of the tampering attempts in the Titan Shield, analysis of the intended fraud pattern, the complete email chain between Lucas and Mrs. Sterling, timestamps and system logs proving the authenticity of all evidence, a formal assessment signed by Marcus Webb, licensed investigator, stating that the evidence had been obtained legally and was admissible in court. I did not access any unauthorized systems. I did not break any laws. I used my legitimate system access to document legitimate security concerns. I worked with a licensed investigator. I reported my findings through proper legal channels. I was doing exactly what Marcus had advised, letting professionals handle it. I ended my engagement with Lucas via email. Lucas, I'm aware of the tampering attempts in the Titan Shield system. I'm aware of your communications with your mother. I'm aware of her plans. I have filed a comprehensive report with the SEC documenting everything. Our engagement is over. I will be terminating my contract with Sterling Global effective immediately. I would advise you to contact an attorney. Lydia, I hit send at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday evening, sitting in my server room, surrounded by the hum of processors and the glow of monitors. Then I did what I had planned for weeks. I submitted my resignation from Sterling Global. The contract was terminated. The access credentials were revoked. The Titan Shield would be managed by their internal IT team, though none of them understood it the way I did. They would maintain it, but they would never perfect it. I had given them 5 years of invisible genius. They had repaid me with mockery. That seemed fair somehow. The SEC investigation moved faster than I expected. 48 hours after my report was filed, federal agents appeared at Sterling Global's offices with a warrant. They seized all digital records. They froze all accounts pending investigation. 2 weeks later, the first indictments were filed. Lucas Sterling was charged with tampering with federal evidence and attempting to obstruct a Securities and Exchange Commission investigation. Mrs. Sterling was charged with securities fraud, insider trading, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. Mr. Sterling, who had been essentially clueless about his wife's scheme, was named as a witness but not charged. I watched the news coverage from my cabin. The headlines were spectacular. Sterling Global acquisition halted. SEC investigation reveals massive fraud scheme. Mrs. Sterling arrested. CEO's wife orchestrated $8 billion acquisition fraud. Lucas Sterling facing federal charges. Son attempted to cover up mother's crimes. The company's stock dropped 45% in the first day. By day 3, it had fallen 60%. Sterling Global, which had been one of the most stable, trusted investment firms in the country, was now synonymous with corporate corruption. And the beautiful irony was that the company survived. The acquisition was halted, but Sterling Global's fundamental business remained intact. The Titan Shield, my creation, had actually protected the company. By detecting the tampering, by documenting the fraud, it had prevented something far worse: the company being destroyed in the aftermath of a successful fraud scheme. My security system had saved them by making it impossible for them to hide what they were doing. 3 weeks after the indictments, I received a call from the Sterling Global Board of Directors. They wanted to hire me, not as the anonymous ghost architect, but as a consultant to help them rebuild their digital infrastructure in the aftermath of the scandal. They wanted me to testify before Congress about the importance of robust security frameworks. They wanted me to help other companies understand how to protect themselves from internal fraud. They offered me a new contract: 3 years, $5 million annually, plus stock options, and a seat on the board's Technology Advisory Committee. It was everything: the recognition, the authority, the opportunity to use my expertise to protect other companies. I accepted. But I did something else too. I anonymously funded the creation of the Lydia Hayes Foundation for Women in Technology, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing scholarships, mentorship, and career development opportunities for young women pursuing careers in computer science and cybersecurity. My first donation, $2 million. My legacy would not be the silence of a ghost. It would be the visible, tangible evidence of my genius being used to lift others. I stood in my office on Sterling Global's executive floor, my office equipped with a state-of-the-art security system of my own design, and I looked out at the city. The corduroy jacket hung on a hook near my desk. I wore it sometimes even now, not because I was poor, not because I couldn't afford better, but because it reminded me of something essential: that worth isn't measured by appearances, that genius doesn't require validation, that the people who matter will eventually see you for who you really are. Lucas had faced 2 years in federal prison for his tampering attempts. Mrs. Sterling had faced 6 years for her more serious crimes. Mr. Sterling had survived, but his company had been forever changed by the scandal. And me? I had been transformed from a ghost into a visible force, someone recognized as essential, brilliant, and invaluable. But the most important transformation wasn't external. It was the realization that I had never needed them to see me. My worth had never depended on their validation. My genius had always been real, whether they acknowledged it or not. I had loved Lucas. That love had been genuine. But his inability to see me, his willingness to let his family mock me, his complicity in trying to tamper with my life's work, had revealed something crucial. He had never actually known me at all. And that was okay, because I had finally stopped needing him to. I received an invitation to speak at a technology conference 6 months after the Sterling scandal had faded from the headlines. The audience was 1,000 people: entrepreneurs, engineers, security experts, young women just starting their careers in technology. I stood on stage in jeans and a simple sweater. My jacket was in my office, but I didn't need it anymore as a symbol. I had become visible. I spent 5 years being invisible, I told the audience. I designed systems that protected billions of dollars of assets. I created something beautiful and elegant and utterly unbreakable. And nobody knew my name. And do you know what I learned? The invisibility didn't diminish my work. It didn't make me any less brilliant. It didn't make my genius any less real. What I learned is that your value is never measured by how visible you are. Your worth is never determined by what other people think of you. You are valuable because of what you create, because of what you know, because of who you are, not because someone else finally noticed. So to anyone in this room who feels overlooked, underestimated, or invisible, your time is coming. The work you do in private, the expertise you build in silence, the genius you develop when nobody is watching, that's real. That matters. And eventually the right people will see it. And if they don't, it doesn't matter. You already know the truth about yourself. The audience stood up. The applause was deafening. But I wasn't standing there for them. I was standing there for the 17-year-old girl in the third row who looked like she didn't belong, who looked like she was questioning whether she was smart enough, whether she was worthy enough. I was standing there to tell her what I wish someone had told me. You are enough. Your brilliance is real. Your worth is not negotiable. And nobody gets to diminish that. Not family, not fiancés, not anyone. If you've made it this far, you understand. Respect is non-negotiable. My worth wasn't defined by Mrs. Sterling's glare or the cheap hoodie she judged. My story proves that silence can be a weapon, and patience, the patience to let Lucas compromise the Titan Shield security, can be the ultimate power. If this resonated with you, if a person has gaslit you into professional invisibility because you don't wear a fancy suit, tell them this. Your silence doesn't make you weak. Your boundaries don't make you difficult. Your survival makes you extraordinary. Never let superficial judgment cloud your genius. The revolution happens when you decide to write your own ending. They thought I was a burden needing a loan. I became the architect who dismantled their multi-billion-dollar empire. Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.